Hello, and thank you so much for having me on set today. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I would like to express my gratitude to the whole Youth Link team for having me today alongside the amazing Louisa. So thank you so much for this. So because of time, I'll not take much time, and I'll just go straight into my presentation. And knowing that like this year's conference is based on like our climate emergency youth wake role for people and planet. So I'll just get straight into my presentation. So let's focus on like looking at the overview of climate justice, like why is climate justice important, like to everybody in here? Why do you think climate justice is important? um I'll start by saying that the climate is changing, and so are human activities that are contributing to this, and the impacts are already being felt by people, plants, and animals across the globe. But however, you see that the impacts of climate change are not evenly distributed, whereby you find that the poorest countries and the most vulnerable people within them, particularly those whose economies are dependent on agriculture, will be are mostly affected despite having contributed least to climate change, which is very an unfair situation that has led like to NGOs and even the developing countries to call for climate justice. So basically, justice is generally understood to mean that which is right, which is fair, appropriate, or deserved, with just being achieved when an unjust act is redressed. So within the context of climate change, this means that the poorest countries and people should be supported by those who have contributed most to climate change. And as a fair new concept, there are multiple definitions of climate justice, and people so basically it's how the other like others are being treated unfairly, despite contributing the least to like climate change. So essentially, climate justice means trying to ensure that people and the planet are treated fairly in the ways in which we, first of all, we try to reduce further climate changes, for example, by cutting down the amount of fossil fuels we burn to produce energy, which is not like in general, we call that mitigation. And also adapting to the changes we have brought about in the climate. For example, like developing crops that are resistant to droughts, where rainfall levels have developed as a result of climate change, which is generally known as adaptation. So basically, that's why we always see when you say, oh, climate adaptation and mitigation. So what I'm trying to say is that the climate effects are being felt differently in different countries and nations. And the global south in particular is being like it is the most vulnerable part of the world, where these effects are felt, like these impacts are at large, even though the poor, the people in there, their contribution is very minimal. It's very minimal, you know, and the environment, like focusing on Malawi in particular, you find that the environmental performance index, looking at Malawi's performance, it's very poor. Malawi is very far from achieving, like, in climate action. Malawi is very far in terms of forestry, in terms of this agriculture, fisheries, air pollution, and all of that. Malawi is very far, you know. So, which means these impacts, if we don't do anything right now, if we don't join hands right now, it means people in the global south, people in Malawi are gonna suffer even the more, you know. So, what are some of the interventions, despite the fact that these things are happening, but what are some of the interventions that are available in Malawi, or even being done by the Malawian youth in particular, in trying to like to contribute towards climate adaptation? So I'll focus much on what the young leaders from Malawi are doing in trying to adapt to the effects of climate change. So there are so many alternatives that the Malawian youth are doing. You find that when it comes to energy, there are those youth that are bringing in different sources of energy as an alternative source of energy, like bringing in clean energy, whereby people are now producing biogas from waste, producing briquettes, just so that people no longer as an alternative from to charcoal and firewood as a source of energy, just so that people deforestation levels can be reduced, So the use of briquettes, the use of biogas, and then even involvement in climate smart agriculture, in using ways that are not altering the soil health, And at the very same time, the youth that are in the forefront advocating for youth engagement, youth involvement, girls and young women involvement towards climate action. And at the very same time, making sure that youth are being for example, for the youth participation, advocating for youth inclusion and engagement at all levels. We know that people are always saying, okay, youth mainstreaming, but then I feel like we should move from just having talks. Now it's time to walk the talk, So having youth included at all levels could be in negotiations. Right now we're moving towards COP26. Having youth representation is very vital, because we don't want somebody who should be speaking on behalf of the youth as though the youth are not there themselves. We want to hear voices of the youth. What exactly are the youth? How are the youth contributing towards climate action, and how can they get involved during pre-COP, post-COP, and during COP? So we want youth participation at all levels, from grassroots level to international level as well. And then there's those that are involved in recycling of waste. For example, you like that picture here, where the youth somebody is involved in recycling these glasses and from glass bottles, and then making glass tumblers out of that. I mean, that's one of the amazing initiatives we can recommend. And then you find that there are also those youth that are involved in cleanup campaigns, whereby they're not only cleaning around the areas, but they're also sensitizing the people, in proper waste management, things to do with land pollution, air pollution. So those are some of the ways in which the youth, just a few of what the youth are actually doing here in Malawi. There's actually a lot that the youth are doing. So how can the Scottish and Malawian youth work together towards climate action? I feel like we can work together. If we are to achieve this, we really need to work together to make sure that to make sure that this is achieved. So how do we do this? How can we achieve that? So I think one way in which we can do that is through through partnerships, through collaborations and knowledge sharing. Where, for example, what we're doing right now, let's say if we had Louisa make a presentation of what the Malawian youth are doing. I mean, somehow it doesn't make sense per se, because now you'll be thinking, okay, what happened to the Malawian youth? It's different when you're actually hearing whatever it is that has to be said from the person who is coming from there, who has ever experienced what they're saying. So I think those are some of the things that we can be doing, like giving each other platforms, knowledge sharing, and then see how best can we do this, and at the very same time making partnerships. For example, let's say Scottish youth have like they're having like platforms where they need people to like people from different from other countries to maybe express themselves. They're like to actually have a chance to participate or share what they have. So those are some of the platforms that we can do, and those are things that I would recommend to say, okay, we can work together, to make sure that no one is being left behind, because this fight is for everybody, and irrespective of your gender, irrespective of your education background, financial status, or where you're coming from, it doesn't matter, because climate change is real, and these effects, like it's affecting people everywhere, especially at the global south. So I feel like there's that platform where we can actually work together and see how best we can fight climate change. So thank you so much for being a wonderful audience, and we'll take questions after Louisa's presentation. And for now, let me hand it over to Louisa to also give us our presentation. Thank you so much.
So as Tim mentioned, I'm the Youth and Schools Officer for the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. It's a real pleasure to be in this job. It's one of the most diverse and interesting jobs I've ever had, working internationally, but between two very specific countries. And it may be a new organisation for many of you. So if we could move on to the next slide, I will start just letting you know a little bit of information about who we are. So as the slide says, the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, the SMP, not the SNP as many people mistake it for originally, exists to coordinate, support, represent civic links by harnessing expertise and enthusiasm to benefit both nations in reciprocal partnership. And this is essentially what we like to think of as one of the most innovative approaches to international development. It's very much not an approach, the traditional approach based on donors and recipients, but on long-standing and very much mutually beneficial people-to-people links. So these might be sort of community to community, family to family, people to people links, essentially quite modest in scale, but together a very formidable force for progressive change. So we basically are the network that pulls everyone together, whether small scale operations or very large. And this way we can harness experience and expertise, enthusiasm from across Scotland, and help inspire a new generation of Scots and Malawians to become involved together in a variety of innovative new ways. And next slide, please. If we could move on to slide 3, perfect. So who can create a partnership through us? What does this involve? We basically involve a whole host of different civic links. Perhaps you can just press the forward arrow quite a few times. I've got quite a few names to pop up here. So basically through youth groups, schools, charities, local authorities, businesses. I think there's one more to come up there. Hospitals, maybe one more after that. And churches, thank you very much. We're basically trying to share expertise and create real friendships through learning in a two-way reciprocal friendship. And I always love to do this with youth groups. If we ever doubt what partnership means, what is the true meaning of partnership, just think about friendship. If you think about your best friend, do you idolize them? Do you pity them? Probably not. But every healthy relationship comes from mutual respect, mutual understanding, eagerness to learn from each other and grow as a person. And after all, that's essentially what the human drive for friendship and therefore partnership exists for. And I always think this is a really important reflection to have when thinking about your own partnerships and when you set up a partnership and think about your expectations and intentions. Next slide, please. So you might be thinking, why Malawi? I certainly thought that for quite a while, and there's a whole load of history. behind this relationship, over 160 years of friendship, going back to 1859. And that is when Blantyre-born David Livingstone, he was an early missionary and explorer, was very warmly welcomed into Nyasaland at the time, what is now Malawi, for the first time. And this was the first time that Scotland and what is now Malawi had real contact and connection. And basically, this just opened up a friendship between the two countries for the last 160 years. And friendship political support has just grown exponentially ever since. To kind of demonstrate this, the second biggest city in Malawi is now called Blantyre as well, which just shows the kind of effect and knowledge that Malawi already has about Scotland. Next slide, please. One of the biggest facts you'll find that our recent research found was that 46% of Scots personally know someone with a connection to Malawi, which is just astronomical. Even, you know, my granny knows someone who made blankets to be sent over to Malawi and vice versa. And we're surrounded by people that have got real life friendships, and, you know, with the ease of current international travel, these friendships have really deepened in an even more human connection over the last 20 to 30 years. Obviously, that's been a challenge during COVID, and we are obviously now talking about the real issues of climate change and CO2 emissions. So that's a very hot topic for us, is how do we continue this friendship, especially with a country where people-to-people interactions in person are so key to keeping this strong. So next slide, please. So basically, what do we do for Youth in Schools? A quick overview. We basically set up partnerships. We provide inspiration, preparation, matchmaking, that's the best part of my job, and introductions. And we set you sail with your new partners, and it's very much up to you what you would like to do in your partnerships. That said, we still provide support. We deliver forums for any youth leaders, teachers, practitioners. We deliver workshops ourselves. We can provide inspiration from previous partnerships. Should you come into any challenges, we can provide mediation. And we have our annual big youth festival, which is for young people involved in partnerships to come together and celebrate their links. We also create and promote resources. We're soon developing more resources around key topics of interest for young people in both countries. These can be delivered by yourselves and your own partnerships, or even without a partnership, you can deliver these, or you can invite me along to come and deliver it for you. And last but not least, we have a youth committee aged 18 to 24 years for young people who are very interested to speak out on topics of international development and how this relates to our relationship with Malawi. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a few pictures of the kind of youth and schools work that has been going on in, I would say probably this is all from the last 5 years. We've got pictures of a Boys Brigade trip to their partner school in Malawi here. We've got some of our Youth in Schools events. There's just 2 more pictures to show in here. If you could click a few more times. Thank you very much. We could see Malawians wearing kilts as they arrived to Edinburgh Airport there. We've had members of the youth committee speak to royalty, Princess Anne. We've got members of our youth committee at the bottom left there speaking directly to MSPs. And we had young people earlier this summer speaking directly to the Minister for Scotland, talking about issues around COVID and adaptation, and young people directly from Malawi telling them about their issues and hesitations around vaccines. So really impactful work that can get straight to the top, and young people can have a voice to the people who are, you know, really worth listening to and who really do need to hear from the young people directly. So next slide, please. So we're all here at this conference to talk about youth work and climate action. Does youth work have a place, and what can we do about it? So one of the biggest facts that I found most important to understand basically about Malawi, I don't want to speak for them, as Brenda has already mentioned, but in Malawi, 80% of the population is under 35 years old. I'll just repeat that 80% of the population is under 35 years old. For me, that is astronomical. And as in lots of European countries and African countries, a young person over there is considered between 18 to 35 years old. So this is a colossal amount of the population. And with climate change causing an existential threat to both of our countries, there has never been more important time to harness the energy of the youth population in creating this innovation and adaptation that we need at such a fast rate, and faster than any of us might have experienced before. So as Brenda says, Malawi is already feeling the heavy effects of climate change through flooding, droughts, lack of green energy. And so, as she says, Malawi must adapt and innovate right now, as it's literally a matter of survival today. And Scottish young people, it's worth starting up a partnership or opening those conversations with your youth group, as we can really learn from the urgency of action that must be taken in Malawi, as we must too. It's just even more imminent for Malawi. And while Scotland requires a so-called green recovery from our detrimental CO2 contribution to the atmosphere that we very much now rely on to live our current lives, Malawi is much more in a position to skip these steps and fast track to the eco-friendly innovations that we are actually having to adapt to. They don't need to adapt at all, given them the right knowledge and assistance and input from the people who can. They can just get there immediately and skip any mistakes that we have had. And as a country that has gained so much of our economic wealth through our CO2 contribution, it's really time, I think, that we offer this to Malawi. And this is something that can really be explored through conversations with young people, discussions, and involving, if you wanted to take it a step further, Malawian voice, and then involving Scottish voice in the Malawian discussions and vice versa. So as we see from Brenda, we already have young people ready to lead, innovate, and speak. And if we're going to move as fast as we really need to with climate change, we need to harness the innovation and energy from young people now, because they are essentially the only members of our population that hold those qualities of fast-moving, innovative, and ready to speak and ready to lead. So first of all, with the Scotland-Malawi partnership, we've got 3 things ongoing at the moment. So basically, this is 26 voices from young climate leaders across Scotland and Malawi, and Brenda Mwale is one of them. And I was going to show a very short 1-minute clip of this. Is this possible to show just now? One example from Edward.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I'm just going to stop this share though, and then we'll share the video.
Great, thank you.
My name is Edward Chitombe, one of the climate change young leaders and also youth ambassador for Malawi Scotland Partnership. Some of the environmental problems that we face here in Malawi as a nation, it includes deforestation, pollution, floods, and also destruction of biodiversity. Focusing much on deforestation, Malawi as a nation, we have contributed a lot to climate change through deforestation, as the total population of Malawi, about 81%, relies on firewood as a source of energy. That is why we call for the delegates that are going to represent us at COP26 to invest more on clean energy, and at the same time to invest more in waste management, so that some of the waste, some of the resources that are considered to be waste can also be reflecting on the economic impact. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for sharing that. Do follow the series. We are working up to 26 voices in total across Scotland and Malawi by the time that COP arrives. This has been a year-long project until now, so do check that out. And I hope there will be a way to share the link very soon. So otherwise, if it's possible to hop back to the slideshow, I will just mention that we have our youth festival every spring around March time as well. Currently, this always follows themes of climate, justice, and last year included race inequality as well. This is live webinars, conversations led by young people across Scotland and Malawi. You can actually listen now on Spotify. It's just the previous slide there, if possible. Thank you very much. You can listen now on Spotify. If you just search for Scotland-Malawi Partnership on Spotify, you can listen directly to 3 different podcasts led entirely by young people, live having conversations between Scotland and Malawi. We've got Kathy and Chifundo here featured. Please listen to their podcast on climate change. Chifundo is actually chairing a panel later today at YouthLink's conference as well. And do join us in 2022. And if you wanted to go the whole hog, you could definitely start a climate-themed partnership for your youth group. That is something I can support with. You could base it around anything from tree planting to community gardens, pen pals and rewilding, projects that you can both do across Scotland and Malawi and are beneficial to both of our countries. We had a Youth in Schools forum just last night where we featured young voices for the very first time. And a quote from one of the young people there, they said that their school partnership had helped them to become much more resilient as a person and think outside of the box, and it even helped them to decide what they wanted to go on and do in the future. So I definitely think from this whole experience, it's so important to let young people in both of our countries to speak to each other and for themselves. It's one of the most important messages, and it's a way to get young people from any part of society involved in thinking outside of our own country, thinking outside the box, and creating innovative solutions to tackling the existential threat of climate change that we both face. Okay, final slide, please. Thank you very much. Okay, so next steps, you can become a member for free for youth groups. It's absolutely free. Just come onto our website and sign up. This will gain you access to connections, lots and lots of different members you can explore on our map, where other people are based in Scotland and Malawi. And you can just contact me if you like, if you'd like to flag interest in the opportunities such as the Youth Festival, the Youth in Schools forums, or even a partnership, or if you'd just like more information on resources. So thank you very much. It's been a real privilege to speak again at the YouthLink conference, and I hope you've enjoyed the presentation and learned something new. Thanks so much to the young climate leader, Brenda Mwale. It's such a pleasure to include a young voice directly from Malawi. So thank you very much.